we're at SHOT Show 2025. I got kind of last minute, just in the week before this thing happened. Our buddy Hector from Chosen Armory hit me. He's like, "Hey man, would you be interested in having Frank Proctor on your show?" And I go, "Are you serious?" Like, of course I want to talk to Frank Proctor. And a connection was made, and we connected. And you, very last minute, on a very busy week, I'm sure you got a lot going on with the people that you work with and need to see here, agreed to sit down with me, and here we are. And I feel very privileged. Frank, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks, Scott. I appreciate it, man. Thanks for having me on, man.
I'm stoked to talk to you. I want to talk. There's a lot of things, a lot of questions I have, like on the training side of things. And I know a little bit about your background. I've never shot with you before. You're an East Coast guy, and so I'm always out trying to learn new things from new people about their process and how they got to where they're at. You have a story journey of, through the world of shooting and through the industry at large. And I just want to dig into that a little bit, learn a little bit more about you, and hopefully help the audience learn more about you. But I'm going to kick it off with this. Everybody I've talked to, or everybody that's maybe taken a class from you or whatever, always had very good things to say about you. And in this industry, that's, and I talked to a lot of people, it's been very positive. And I think that's interesting, actually, because in an industry that's so critical, and oftentimes mean about it, people seem to really like you, man. So I'm anxious to get into this today.
Awesome. I'm glad. Yeah. For the most part, I like everybody I've ever trained with. Some exceptions here and there, but for the most part, yeah.
So let's just start talking about you a little bit. So you're an East Coast guy, or you're from the South, so you're from Alabama. Were you born and raised there?
Yeah, born and raised in Alabama, but kind of been all over with the Army and other experiences and stuff.
So what was growing up like for you?
Kind of grew up in a small town. Football was my gig. That's what I was kind of going to do after high school. I was going to do some college stuff and see whatever after that, and then. Somewhere in high school, like senior year of high school, decided I was going to get married. Mm-hmm. That didn't work.
In high school?
Yeah, but I didn't get married. So I went to work for my dad, right after high school, instead of going to try and play football, and did that. Came back and decided like that wasn't what I was going to do either. And I had a bunch of friends through high school had done like a split option thing through the National Guard, where they went to basic training like the summer after like their junior year of high school, and then after they graduated high school, went to AIT and. We're in the Guard unit was in our hometown. So I came back home, after that first summer. I was like, I don't know what I want to do. I think I'll do that, So I did that. Joined the Guard unit where I was at. They were an armor unit, tanks and stuff. So I went up there and, hey, what MOS do you want? What job do you want to do? I was like, I want to drive a tank. And they're like, you're too tall to drive a tank. I'm like, damn. So
yeah, actually, I got to say, like when I opened the door, so we're just set up the hotel here. I opened the door. I'm like, that's not Frank Proctor. That dude's like, the guy's like 1.5 feet taller than Frank Proctor's supposed to be. Like, how tall are you?
6'2"-ish.
Yeah,
or was. I don't know now.
You're a long dude, man. Like, okay, so no tank driving for you. So I assume you're also not flying fighter jets.
No.
So all right. So what happened?
So it rolled through like the kind of recruiter story stuff. They were, I was like, all right, what else you guys got here? And like, I was like, ooh, Intel analyst. Like, I want to do that. And they're like, oh, well, a lot of times people don't have the ASVAB scores to do that. You pick something else, like, light wheel vehicle mechanic. I don't know. The Army had those Cuck V trucks, like TMZ kind of trucks in. I had one of those. Like, I don't know. I've always been kind of mechanically inclined, or like I really tore shit up when I was a kid, and like took stuff apart and whatnot. But I was like, maybe that. Go through MEPS, like you already physical stuff and everything. And they're like, hey, so you picked this MOS, you can be an intelligence analyst. I thought it was going to be James Bond, right? So I was like, all right, cool. And they're like, yeah, you'll go to basic training here, you go AIT there. I'm like, all right, cool. It's like, but this is not a bonus MOS, right? I'm like, what do you mean? And this was like 1992. I was like 17.
I see where this conversation's going. Yeah.
So I was like, oh, what about that other one? Or she's like, well, some of these bonuses you can get, or these MOSs, you can get up to $2,500 for signing up.
Like the more money that you'd ever seen in your life.
Right? Yeah. So like, hey, how about that other one? So that's how I became a mechanic. So I went to basic AIT, came back, was just doing drill at the Guard unit there and going to college at night and working at a hardware store, lumberyard during the day. Like I remember sitting in class one night, I was like, man, what do I want to do with my life that involves 4 years of this? And I couldn't come up with anything. I was doing like a pre-engineering major, it was like, I don't know, I'm kind of mechanically inclined, So one day at work, man, kind of had a bad day at work, and I called an Army recruiter who lived exactly or was stationed exactly 45 minutes from where I was at. He's like, hey, meet me at Hardee's in 45 minutes.
Oh, he's on it.
He was there. So I was in the Army and headed to Germany 2 weeks later, and I just stayed with the MOS I had. Okay. And I was a wheel vehicle mechanic there in Germany. Pretty fortunate chain of events for me, though. I got assigned to a cavalry unit, which is pretty cool. He was like not quite the regular Army, and then just a little bit more laid back. And I was in Germany, and then I got assigned to the air cavalry side. We had helicopters. Like they had a slot for one wheel vehicle mechanic. So I didn't work in a motor pool. I didn't work for anybody. It's just like, hey, we got trucks. Can you fix them? I'm like, sure. Okay. So it was just like I'm really wired that way. Like, give me a task, I'll do it. Like, not really wired well. I tell people I was not a great soldier. Just like, hey, do this way. Like, I was a pretty good SF guy because it was like, hey, like, what's the job? Okay, I'll get it done. But while I was there, I was like looking around. There was a recruiting poster for Army Special Forces there on our camp there. Ooh, that sounds cool. Read through all this stuff, and I get down to the bottom of the list, like the requisites, Okay. You had to have been in the Army for 4 years and be an E5 to go to selection at the time. I was like, shit. I was on a 3-year enlistment, and I was kind of getting that place. I was like, I don't know if I really like the Army, but this sounds cool. And, like, so, all right, cool, sounded cool. So I got out of the Army, and I was a mechanic for, I think, 5 years on the civilian side. Okay. Married, divorced, 9/11 rolled around. I was working in a Cadillac shop in Birmingham. And there was I remember when 9/11 went down, I was like in the shop and like somebody was talking about something. I walk up front and I look and I'm watching the TV there, and like, plane flew into a building. I'm thinking,
this is in real time. This is what's happening.
This happened, man. So I was like, I was thinking, somebody said like a plane crash. I was thinking like a Cessna flew into the building, right? So I go out there, I'm looking at it, I'm watching the fire. Like I watched live when the second one flew in. I was like, ooh, this is something, So, I mean, not many days after that, there was a kid in the shop talking about Special Forces stuff. I hear him like, he's kind of like talk, run his mouth and stuff like, Special Forces this, 20 Special Forces that. I'm like, hey man, what are you talking about? And he was like, 20 Special Forces crews. I'm like, that's here in Birmingham? He's like, yeah. I was like, you got a phone number? So I called a recruiter and they got in the pipeline to go the SF route and with 20th Group, and then eventually went to selection, and things kind of rolled there from like 2003. I said May. I got back in October, November of 01. Got into 20th Group and then went to selection in May of 2002.
So time out for a second, man. Is this like on an 18 X-ray contract? This is before those started?
18 X-ray deals, like you could come out of high school or come off the street and go into the Army to be a Green Beret. Okay. And that has existed at different times in history. Like I think in the Vietnam era, I may be wrong, but I think in that era that was a possibility. At the time when I was in, it wasn't a possibility. Okay. So I was like, prior service and got into kind of a cool thing with the Guard. There's 2 Guard SF units, 7 or groups rather. So 19th and 20th Group, and 20th Group's headquarters happened to be in Birmingham, Alabama. I had no idea.
A friend of mine's in the 19th.
Oh, cool. Yeah. They're mostly like West Coast out here, but
California dude.
Yeah, man. So it was a good gig. It was a way to get. I mean, you got to go to selection and everything too. But like at the time, in the beginning of the GUI, there wasn't a lot of money for schools and stuff. So that's why, like, from like I think it was October, November, I got in. It was May before I got a selection date. Okay. And in between, I went to airborne school, and it was like the merit of order list was a little bit whack. Guys that have been
they're trying to figure this out.
Yeah, right.
And they had to pipeline people more quickly. They had higher volume of people coming in because their recruitment numbers were going nuts. I mean, people were lined up to sign up.
Yeah, and it was early too, and then like money to send people to schools, and selection is technically a school. So we're in 20th Group. Like if you're like going to be an SF dude, you're a non-qualified personnel. So every drill weekend we would do like selection events. There would be a PT test and a run, and then maybe some map reading kind of stuff and some land nav stuff, kind of prepping you a little bit for selection, but also kind of like pre-selection. And then they sent like a few different sets of dudes before I got a chance to go. Like guys didn't make it, I was like starting to get a little frustrated. Like, shit, man, like I was looking into the other selection and was digging into that. And I got a phone call at work one day. It was like, hey, can you be at Fort Bragg for selection, in 2 days? Like,
wow. Okay.
I can. So that was that, man. Went to selection, got selected in May, which was hot. And then later in 2003, the battalion I was in, 1st Battalion, 20th Group, mobilized to go to Afghanistan. And NQPs had an option. If you were, you could either continue on and go to the Q course, or you could deploy with the unit and do your job.
Okay.
And I'm like, I don't want to go to Afghanistan and be a mechanic. I came to do this to be.
I know a lot of guys that did it. Actually, I probably know 5 guys that did it. A couple of helicopter mechanics too. Yeah. And this is no slight on them, no disrespect, but it sounds miserable. Yeah. It's going to be a lot of work in a very hot environment all the time. There's never like you'll get days off, but it's going to be the same stuff over and over and over again. Like I can't imagine.
Bro, I was a wheel vehicle mechanic in Bosnia. When I was in Germany, we deployed to Bosnia.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. Like, I developed carpal tunnel when I was, like, 22 years old, like, working on trucks. And I would have, like, I would be working on something, and, like, the parts and tools would freeze while I was, like, ice and shit. It was raining and freezing.
So you get, like, freezing rains, like icicles coming off your tools?
I need that tool again. Break the ice off of it.
Dude, that sounds awful. It sounds awful.
Mud. Oh, I hate mud. To this day, I hate mud. I was a record driver too since I was a mechanic, so I do like a lot of recovery stuff, and like I started making people pay. Like, hey, you know that the backside of the airfield over there is like muddy, right? You know you're gonna get stuck, right? So cool. All right, like I'll drive the record, big 8-wheel drive Hemmet, like tires like this big. It ain't getting stuck. Well, it could get stuck, but I never got stuck. So I roll back there, like. And there was the main winch on that thing was a 26-ton straight pull winch. Like the cable was like that big around, dude. So like, hey, walk over here, grab this cable, and I was like, pay it out to you and hook up your truck. I didn't have to do that. I could like pull it over there like closer and like hook the chain to it or something. So
make it work.
Right? Make it work. Just start learning like, hey, you get to walk through all that mud, instead of me. Yeah.
So back to Afghanistan. You make the choice, like you're not going to work on vehicles over there, so you go the other route.
Yeah. So there was also that promise too, like, hey, like a lot of times like guys deploy like this, you would go out and manage somebody on the gun, you can go out with them. Some people like took that like bait or whatever. Like, nah, man, I came to do this job. So went on to Bragg, went to the Q course, graduated the Q course in I think graduated the Q course actually in November of 3. Or 4.
Okay.
4. No, of 3. But I'm getting old, bro.
Well, I was going to go back and ask you, so from the time you got the phone call, can you be at selection in 2 days, right, to the time you finish the Q course to get selected or finish selection, how long is that time period?
So selection, May 02, graduated the Q course in November 03.
Okay.
Yep. Graduated Robin Sage, Green Beret at that point. I still needed to finish SEER. I went to SEER in February. So, through the like history, like the pipeline's just a little bit different, which phase or how many phases and which order the phases are, but so I went all the way through, the qualification course. Robin Stage is like the culmination thing. So you're a Green Beret at that point, still need language and SEER. I was able to test out a language, so I didn't have to go to language. That mean I can speak Spanish.
What does that mean? Like, so did you speak Spanish?
Yeah. So I was like smart enough to test out of it at the time, or like studied enough to test out of it.
Time out. So hold on. You can test out of a language school, but you did not speak Spanish.
No. It may be a little bit different now. Like the DLPT, the language testing, right? At the time, so I'd had some Spanish in high school, and like in like phase 3 of the Q course was like you're like kind of like going to college. It's like learning your MOS, like you're learning your specialty. So it was like PT in the morning, and then class from like 9 to 4 or 5, and then whatever after that. So in the afternoons, I would listen to like some DVD or CDs and stuff, and like picking some stuff up, and then before I went out to Robin Sage, I went and took the DLPT, and at the time it was like, and it could like deductive reasoning is like I can do that okay, so it would be like, you'd hear something and there'd be some answers there. I was like, all right, I picked up that word. That means that phrase is that. I was like, all right, cool, this is what they're talking about, So I was able to like, and it was like the minimum. I mean, I tested like, so if you make this score, you don't have to go to language school. So for me, it saved me about three months or so. Moving on.
Kind of accelerates you through things.
The last time I took the DLPT for Spanish, it was like wild. It was like you listen to this big long conversation, and then it gets done. Instead of like being like a multiple choice thing where you can like reason your way through it, it's like, hey, so how are the people in this area feeling about the new political climate? Where it's like, man, I couldn't tell you in my neighborhood how people feel about that, but definitely not in Spanish. So it was different. So like you needed to speak Spanish to be able to pass
then answer that question while writing it and write it out in Spanish or whatever. Yeah, that's hilarious. Okay, all right.
So so it was an easier test, and like I lucked my way through that.
Okay, all right.
But then I got done. I did see her. Came back, and like the first thing I did when I got back to group, pretty soon after getting back, I had like just the most beautiful chain of events for a guy like me. So like, hey, you're going to SFALC, which is our shooting and CQB school, Special Forces Advanced Urban Combat course. So I was like, like super cool stuff, like the ninja stuff, right? Mm-hmm. So like through the Q course, like we shot guns like twice, no, maybe like once. We did like an M4 qual and like a familiarization with the M9, and it was like in the rain, like bad rain, like you've been living in the woods for 2 weeks. It wasn't fun. So this was cool. And I got assigned to the free fall team too. They told me that I was like, hey, you're going to go through SFALC with the free fall team, but we don't know if you're going to stay there. And I was like, cool. So I got there and they liked me and like, hey, you did stay here.
You did luck out.
Right. So
is this your luck, or have you made friends along the way? Or I mean,
I was new, like really new, but it was super fortunate. So, and it's like some stuff I feel about training and like if you carry guns for a living, but like, so I'm there and I was excited to be there. No kidding, I liked that kind of stuff. And I was like, hey, this is like part of why I did all this other stuff to be able to get a chance to go do this, Mm-hmm. Guys on my team, like there were a lot of guys on my team that had been on the Marksmanship committee before, or the the SFALC committee period, whether it be CQB or breaching or whatever. So they kind of helped me out, and really good program there where it came from. Just like the base information that guys got, and like so, typical stuff like you're in the bleachers, you get a briefing, you get some information, block of instruction on it. There's a demonstration on it, and then you go out the line and you work through it. And like did a split firing order, so half the dudes are working it and the AIs are up there helping you, Then you go back and you get ready for the next one or the next iteration while those guys are working, right? So just go back, load your mags, get everything ready, and like I'm the guy that's like, all right, I'm done. I don't need to do anything else. I'm over here dry firing what we just worked on, because like I want to be good at it, So I took it this way. It was like, like it matters. Like, I was an 18 Echo. Like I got a lot of other duties and responsibilities, but when it comes time to shoot that gun, it matters that I can shoot the gun. Mm-hmm. And I'm not gonna lie, man, I liked it. I was like, this is fun, Yeah. So at the time, so I'm like, I'm just in the guard. I'm there for the school, and after that, I'm like, hey, go do your regular job.
Go back to like, wrenching on cars.
I don't want to work on cars anymore. Like I want to do this, So I knew that guys could come back there and work, and whatnot. But like, I definitely didn't feel like I was, like worthy of coming back and working as like an assistant instructor or something. I was like, man. Like, I'll come back here and just like work and hang targets or something. So I just come back and be here, So I kind of I don't know if I got conned or what, or suckered, but I was like, hey, who do I got to talk to about, coming back and work here? And like, oh, that guy right there. So I get up and I'm like, not really at parade rest, but like kind of like standing at ease. I was like, hey, I'm sorry, I'd like to, come back and work or something. He's like, we'll think about it. He wasn't the guy.
I've heard this before.
He wasn't the guy, man. But later, the guy, the Godfather, kind of brought me in his office. Like, hey, you want to come back and work next cycle? I'm like, okay, yes, in fact, I do.
Right.
It gets even better, brother. So I'm back and I'm working SFALC, helping people with the shooting thing, as much as I could, and it was remind me to come back, just like some pushback on training things. Okay. And then I get the call like, hey, can you be at Fort Bragg for, sniper school next week? I'm like, yeah, I can.
This is not a true story.
Right.
Man.
It is, man. So it's like my first passion for shooting was long range. Like I loved all the Carlos half-cock stuff and everything, so like, and at the time, 20th Group got 5 slots to, it was called SODIC then, but it's the Special Forces Sniper course now, 5 slots a year to like the regiment level course. Then every group runs their own program, but it's like, whoa, I'm gonna go to like the big course,
the big schoolhouse.
Yeah. Did that. It was like 6 weeks, it was great. I get there and like my line coach had like a family emergency, so he wasn't gonna be there. And like instead of him, we got one of the OG guys that like wrote the manual, like Vietnam era guy, like old crusty dude, but like, it was like just yeah. Yeah. We were doing the first thing we did was And back then it was M24s, and this guy actually like spec'd out the M24. So anyway, he's like, we had to put the iron sights on, took scopes off, put the iron sights on, and we're shooting like the NRA kind of course of fire, like 200-yard standing and then kneeling. I don't know if it's kneeling, but seated and prone, did all that kind of stuff all the way out to 600. Prone at 600. But kind of cool, you could do there. But I'm standing there like first course of fire, like 200-yard standing, and I just came from some power, right? Like M4 stuff, right? So I'm like all lean forward and squatted down, like trying to hold this 14-pound rifle still on a bullseye at 200 yards. And he walks by, he's like, "Can I cuss on here?"
Sure, you can say whatever you want. There's
so he
no
walks by, and he's like, "Old crusty white-haired." He was like, "What the fuck are you doing?" Like, I'm trying to hold it still. He's like, "You can't, and that ain't how you do it. This is how you do that."
Right.
So well, it was pretty cool.
Man, you're getting like, I mean, first off, you've already come. You're getting all like the perfect stuff.
Yeah.
Like, you're going all the places everybody wants to go. You're not.
Yeah.
And I guess I got to ask, like, are you just having fun? Is this even hard for you? Like, are you just like, you're feeling, I know I'm privileged. Like, I don't know how this happened, but I'm not going to mess this up kind of thing?
That was a really cool chain of events. Like, kidding, like, shooting school right away, get to come back there and work at the schoolhouse, just soaking in some more stuff. Go to sniper school,
right.
Free fall school right after that, like, yeah, it was great. And then, like, but ultimately I was like, hey, I'm here to do the job.
Do the job. When does that happen?
Deployment. Yeah. So that one, so ended up taking an AGR job at group headquarters. So I'm there. My daughter was just born not too long before then, there and lived there in Birmingham. So like group headquarters in Birmingham, I was like, oh, I'll take a AGR, like full-time guard, right? So like full-time pay and like, you can retire out of it. And like, oh, okay, cool, I'll do that. I'll live here. When there's courses, I'll go out there, deploy. And I get there and like, nah, man, like, and I took the job, like, hey, you kind of work here. Also some kind of good stuff because I was in the group S3, like training stuff. So I got to see kind of some of the backside stuff and go to some conferences and kind of see like, bigger picture Army stuff or, SF command stuff, kind of things we're working.
Okay.
And, I was a gun nerd, so I got to go, they sent me to those things. But like, hey, I came here to go do this job. And, rolled around, like, hey, that wasn't going to happen. So like, okay. So I had a friend that made an acquaintance through like the schoolhouse there, had been in 5th group before. And I'm like, hey, you still know anybody up there? Like, yeah. I was like, hey, I want to
get out of here.
I get a 5th group.
Right.
And I was like, cool. Yeah. So, man, it was like, this was like dream. So like every group has a civ company, and it was A15 at 5th group. Mm-hmm. And start working with the guy, the ops sergeant major up there, and our ops sergeant. And like I had a paragraph and line number. He said, hey, all right, cool, you're already sniper dude. You go to the recce team. You're going to be on this team. So
wow.
Like, all you got to do is get your group commander to sign this.
Oh, God.
So I walk into the group commander.
Did you get him drunk?
A bird colonel's, I should have. But I walk into his office, and I see him like every day in there, right? He's like, hey, sir, can you sign this for me? I start walking out, and he's like, yeah, come on back in. So I had a little sinus thing. So I was like, I sit down. I was like, well, I'm not going to sign this, but like, what else do you want to do? He's like, well, 3rd Battalion's deploying. I want to go with them. So I was from 1st Battalion. No, he wouldn't let me go. So I was like, all right. Or so he's like, okay, like you can deploy with 3rd Battalion. I was, came from 1st Battalion, but, and when I come back, I don't want to work here. So I came back and after the deployment and ended up taking over as the primary instructor for combat marksmanship for the group out there. So
gotcha.
Yeah. I don't know if you don't like throw some other stuff or hear my whole story.
No, man. I'm fascinated. Like I had no idea, about the inside of the military career. I just know you spent a lot of time there and did a lot of things. And at some point along the way, so competition enters the scene here.
Yeah.
Where is that happening side by side or parallel to what we've talked to about this point?
It was a little bit down the road there.
Okay.
Yeah. So,
all right. So here's what I picked up. What I picked up. Dude's a mechanic, right? So he's mechanically inclined. He likes to tinker, right? He knows, and he's a problem solver. He's a solution finder. Also understands how to reverse engineer things, right? Like understand a problem and then figure out how to fix it. So I guess when I say that, there's a process to this. And you want to know, to be good at these things, you want to know all the different pieces of the process. When you said the language school thing and testing out, I'm going, dude, this makes so many pieces are coming together just on the competition shooting side. And that's not all I want to talk about, but process is important, right? But what you told me about the Army and the whole, in the Guard and the whole journey there, that was anything but like there's a process involved, but that's not the process that anybody else goes through. Well, I don't know that for sure, but that's not a typical story. And I know you know that. That's what you're saying. It was kind of almost a fantasy, like a dream thing. So I'm kind of putting the pieces together like, okay, all right, but the language school thing was tripping me out for a second. I was like, wait a minute, this guy learned Spanish by listening to CDs and passed the test. Okay. So, all right. So where do you want to, let's pick up, let's go back to, at some point you are deployed again with the team. And how, from the time you went in, again, getting that phone call to, when was your last deployment?
2010.
Okay. So it's like 7 years.
Yeah. So I started kind of winding down, not too much after that.
Right.
Ended up retiring a little
bit. How was that? Like being part of that, having been there, and then things changed pretty dramatically around then?
Yeah, it kind of sucked.
Yeah, sure.
So I came into the thing to do the job, and when if I wasn't deployed, I was there at the schoolhouse, which is great, and it's kind of a unique thing there with 20th Group's training detachment thing. And as a I got on a team, I got way more exposure to training than I don't know, than a lot of people do. We were running courses pretty frequently, and a little bit more, which our self-out program was really solid. Just kind of the way that thing flowed out. When I took over the marksmanship piece, I had some room. Hey, I would like to add this. I think we should put this kind of stuff in. There's some stuff I got. Other competition shooting stuff, hey, let's add this kind of stuff in, and when I eventually took over as the primary instructor for the sniper program, and that one, our sniper course doesn't produce an identifier, so it's not you're not bound you got to run this, you got to teach this POI.
Okay.
And I remember because it was kind of a fortunate thing of having worked at the Group S3, so I reached out. The Group S3 is kind of the ultimate stop on this, and I reached out. I was like, hey, do I have to run this exact POI, or can we change things and in the same amount of time give the guys more capabilities? Because frequently dudes are deploying within months after some of the courses, so you're like, oh man, as long as you meet at least these if you do more, go for it. So that was pretty fortunate.
So you got autonomy to make some changes.
Checks and balances within the committee and everything too, so it was a cool thing working there because there's a lot of exposure to it, guys from just different backgrounds and experiences, and it's just teaching us anything that you teach, you have to know well enough to teach.
Absolutely. Yeah, and you're getting guys that have been deployed and coming back to go to the school, right? So you're learning in real time what they learned, and is that part of your process in terms of changing the curriculum?
Oh yeah.
What were some of the biggest things?
I'll tell you a big change, man. So in the beginning of the GOI thing, CQB was the flav.
Right.
Everybody wanted to do, and the most of our SFALC stuff was 25 yards and in. And this kind of came a little bit after. It was actually after deployment to Afghanistan too, but after getting into competitive shooting side of the house stuff, and also reading Kyle Lamb's book and digging into some of his stuff, I was like, dude, we got to do this. And I'm the guy for marksmanship now, so it's hey, it's CQB is cool. That's something you need those skills, need those shooting abilities to tie in with it. But it's a big world before you get inside a structure. Hey, let's do a day, all right, where we're doing 100 to 500 meter stuff with the M4. And so we started layering, and that was that was some of the hey, from competitive shooting stuff and Kyle stuff, and then some time on the ground, I was hey, we need this. Guys need this work too.
They need these skills.
So we started plugging that in. That was a really good thing.
Got it. Okay. So, and this is received well by both the consumer of it or the students.
Yeah.
They're yes, this is what we need.
Well,
and is it? Are you getting validation as guys are getting deployed again and then coming back? Is it? I'm sure that's making people happy, right? And they're going back and probably telling the guys there, is that they're relieving or whatever. Hey, when you go back here, this guy's teaching this stuff and whatever. That's got to be kind of cool.
Yeah. And then in the side of the committee, the whole SFALC committee, the breacher dudes, they love breaching. I was a shooting dude. I love shooting, so I'm interested in it from other ways, and it became my hobby. And The CQB guys, there's like, that's like constant, like just little different nuanced things coming down from, people that do it all the time, So it's all of it's just like a constant evolution kind of thing, just like, adding things, never taking away from like, core concept and fundamental stuff. But yeah, the program as a whole, and the community, like just learning and growing.
It was
like,
evolving.
Constantly. Yeah.
It was evolving.
That's cool stuff.
When does competition enter the scene?
May 2007.
Okay, so right then.
Yeah.
Like,
so, yep. So in 2005, I got offered the opportunity to go shoot a match. A guy that had ran marksmanship before me, we were doing a sniper course, or sniper, yeah. I wasn't the PI, I was just, an AI just dude helping out. Excuse me, I hope that went too loud in there.
No, it's all good.
Anyway, so he was over in his room, like cleaning an STI, that was like the whole.
What is that?
Yeah. Right? He was like, "Whoa, what's going on?" He was like, "Hey, man,
blaster."
Yeah, like, you want to go shoot this hipstick match with me tomorrow? No, so that's not real. That's not what we do. The whole get you killed in the streets thing, right? Because I rejected competitive shooting. I didn't know what it was. It's like, it's like that. I don't even know if I've ever even seen it. And he was messing with me. He was like, he wasn't messing with me. It was the truth. He's like, all right, man, whatever, dude. But but if you come out, like some fat old civilian is going to kick your ass. I'm like, shit. I was like younger, I was in shape.
I was like pushing buttons now.
I was like, I can shoot, Well, sure enough, May 2007, I shot an IDPA match, and then like I shot a club IDPA match. And I was like, okay, it's interesting, like not super challenged, but like, what's next? They're like, next weekend's the Alabama State match. I'm like, can I shoot that? I'm like, yeah, but you're not an IDPA member, so you couldn't win anything or whatever. I'm like, I don't care, I'll shoot it. So it was a bigger match. It was like some more stuff, a little more challenging stages, like bigger pool of shooters, like, okay, we'll see a little bit here. Then I shot a USPSA match the next weekend, and it was just a club match. But I was like, whoa, like that can be done with guns.
Yeah.
And then interesting stuff I kind of noticed, like, it was like, hey, I didn't know this was possible. So like, say 6 times on a Saturday morning, like, all right, your time to go execute that. How well can you do it? Mm-hmm. Every one of them I got finished with, I was like, well, there's about 20 things that I'm not as good at as I would like to be. Yeah. And it's possible because, in fact, the fat old civilian dudes did
kick your ass.
Yeah. Right? They can do it. So it was like, from a professional standpoint, like, I carried a gun for a living, like, well, these are things I definitely could be better at. They can be done. So I'd like to be, if I didn't know it existed, right? That's a possibility. I want to be able to do that. From a competitive standpoint, it's like, I didn't really like the way it tasted to be down there. So I started doing that, became my new hobby. I joined a range like off post, and like anytime I could, I was out there shooting a match every weekend. You asked about mistakes. I made a lot of mistakes, like training and doing, I say now, are different. I did a lot of doing. But yeah.
I think a lot of people do. I think a lot of people just get into like, I just need to shoot more. And there's not a structure or framework to how they're getting better at things. They go out to the range, I've got 500 rounds or whatever. And there's not an intention there outside of just going to shoot.
Yeah.
And so like going back to the process piece, are you reaching out? Are you getting coaching or helping from anybody? Or are you just kind of trying to do this on your own and learn?
On my own.
Okay.
Or outside, like, you get into, like, in that era, there wasn't a lot of training out. At the time, like, after I made GM, I was like, hey, Rob Latham does training. I'm going to go do that. But
so you got all the way to GM before you knew people were actually doing this.
But there weren't, even then, there just wasn't a lot of it out there.
Right. Just a little obscure.
Now, so, yeah. So there was like, people like, the friend network, the shooters like talking, throwing this or that out, and then it was like, hey, have you read Enos's book? Like Brian Enos. I was like, no, I hadn't. So dig into that. There were a few books kind of trickled in after that. Like Enos was like, it was a while before I could interpret what
put the pieces together.
Yeah. Because I was reading, like, I know shooting, but the title of the man's book is Practical Shooting Beyond Fundamentals, So I mean, like, at the time, like, to me, it was like shooting was like, hey, stand here, hold the gun like this, do this. He was like thinking on like another level. Like it was like, a few years after I'd been a GM and shooting at a pretty good level and teaching some, like, oh yeah, hey, I get that now. Now. You had it figured out in 1992, or you wrote the book in 1992. But there's been a lot. I read some stuff. Steve Anderson's books. He had in his second book, he had an interview with Brian Enos that took a lot of what that guy has to offer and like put it in a little bit more like layman's kind of terms, a little more like
something that was
digestible.
easily understood.
Okay. But there just wasn't a lot out there. There was a lot of trial and error.
I find it challenging. Like, I think more people are getting better. Okay, so a couple things with the books. So and again, like you said, nobody had really been training this stuff. There wasn't a lot of places to go. So you were dependent on books or going to a match, maybe having a conversation with somebody or actually seeing them perform. Yeah. But obviously we're talking, social media was what it was. Like, it wasn't as easily accessed. I mean, now you can see, a match online, pretty much if you want to. There's a lot of YouTube. This is predates a good amount of that. But people have written books and basically taken their thoughts about what made them successful and put them into writing, right? And in their words, right? And in their way of delivering information. And that doesn't take into account a lot of adult learning models, right? In terms of how people actually take in information, process it, assimilate it, and then can then practically apply it. And so obviously there's much different way people understand this a little bit better, but that was kind of the OG stuff with regard to writing about how to do this better. And other people have done similar things or the same. But you said something there about, like, I was reading through it and all the material might have been there, but I had no idea what he was talking about because I didn't know what I didn't know. Mm-hmm. Right. And I had to go out. But even after then you make GM, then you go back and like, oh, I remember reading that, but that didn't make any sense to me at the time. And I think that's the distinction, or that's the interesting part about coaching or teaching or instructing, however we want to put it. Like, because I think there's a little bit of nuance in each one of those, right? But the ability for somebody to interpret what it is that they can do. Doing something and then explaining it to somebody so that they can get a similar result or understand the process that much better. That's a skill and a talent. And I think it's like we're right at this space right now where people are now talking about it more, because they were chasing guys like Frank Proctor. Like, okay, so they'll watch a video, or they go to a class and they have that 6 hours or whatever it is, whatever the course is, and then they walk away and they're left to train on their own. What do they do? And so I'm curious about, like, what were you doing, like, in your training, on your path to GM, that you would never advise anybody to do? Like, what were those things?
Doing. Just going to range, like setting up a little drill or a mini stage and just shooting it. Shoot it. Oh man, I messed that up. We'll do it again. I messed it up. I'll do it again. Oh, I messed that up. Do it again. Eventually get it kind of straight, and then but what you're really doing was building a habit to fail. When we had classes in session, right? I had an Army class in session. I would go like every day to the other range. Sometimes I'd go in the morning because, as a PI for marksmanship, all I had to do was be standing. I didn't have to open the range. And I was just like, be here at 9 to talk to people. Sometimes at like 9:01 seconds, I'm sliding in front of the bleachers like, hey, you guys, let's talk about this combat marksmanship. Right? Because I would go to that other range and shoot before class and after class if I could or whatever. But the ammo guys started figuring this out. Like, hey, so you're shooting off post, right? Like, yeah, like, hey, take some ammo. Like, just bring brass back. Cool.
Okay.
It came in like 500 round flats. Like, that's what they gave me. Like, that's how much I shot that afternoon.
Wow.
It got to where they would give me a 7.62 ammo can, like, with loose pack. There's 2,000 rounds. I shot 2,000 rounds an afternoon. And I'm talking like hour and a half, dude. Like, I didn't get anything out of that. Other than
that's what I was going to say. So that's a lot of shooting, but what are you getting out of it?
A Glock 34 gets really hot if you have that much ammo. Like, when it's that hot, you can't hold on to it. Put the gun in the ice chest while you load mags. That's what I got out of that. So
wow.
The biggest leap I made in shooting came in like late 07. I did a contract job. So I was doing that every afternoon, right? I kind of got into, like, that was my gig. That was my USPSA fix, right?
There's probably some value in it. I mean, you're learning.
There's education through exposure for sure.
That's my point.
That's the thing, but, like, really, like, what'd you get out of it, So those were wasteful events, and even, like, printed bad stuff on the hard drive. So I go out of town for like a month to do a contract training thing, and I was going to be shooting, but it's just like demos and helping people. I wasn't going to be able to do my USPSA thing. I was like, damn, I'm not going to do that. I made some little scaled down cardboard targets, and like, you couldn't buy them then. Now you can go to Ben Steger Pro Shop, some other places you can buy those things, right?
I've got Ben's targets.
Awesome, right? So I set like an array up, a couple different arrays up in my hotel room. So it'd be on the range all day, come back, and like, I would do this dry fire thing for 10 or 15 minutes, then take a shower and go have dinner, every night for 30 days. But it was like, a 3-target array right here, a couple pieces of steel over on this wall, some other stuff over there. So I figured out I was shooting a Glock 35 in limited and training with the 34 because all the 9mm, right? So I figured out, if trying to dry fire a stock Glock trigger, like you press the trigger once and it just sits, right? So not getting any feedback. I was like, put a little piece of cardboard in between the slide and the barrel and like stay out of battery and can move the trigger back and forth. Like, all right, cool. So I was like, all right, there's those 3 targets, like on the timer, 2 rounds on each of those. I don't know. Accidentally, I noticed that so there's a 3-target array right there. Like, hey, dude, the gun was in between those 2 targets when you pressed the trigger that second time. That would have been a miss. Like, don't want that. Want feedback. Like we all want to hey, I did it right. And usually when we go shoot, it's like after you're done shooting, the target tells you if you did it right, right? Yep. So accidentally in that hotel room, the sights told me I did it wrong. Like, ooh, hey, I don't want that. So, and it's just that kind of how I are. Like nobody wants to go out and shoot and just miss, but we don't know why things aren't going right when we get answers off the targets, right? So I accidentally stumbled into that. I was like, ooh, okay, cool. So now it's definitely getting, triggering it twice in that target, and that started seeing, hey, I can see details now. Not only could I see, I pressed it twice and it was in there. One time was in the middle, one time was in high to the right. It was there's alpha and delta, right?
You're able to diagnose.
Yeah, I was that ain't what I want. If I believe, if we have an intention kind of set when we're training, we get there and we're seeing, we're feeding information into this thing. This thing controls all this stuff, I want to, and this thing engage, a lot of the physical stuff starts happening. So I started seeing that. I was like, hey, I definitely don't want an alpha mic. Oh, we don't really want an alpha delta either. Hey, there's 2 alpha, 2 alpha, 2 alpha. So I would do that, kind of mini stage stuff. I was getting answers off the sites. I built a habit, and just a little bit of a 10 to 15. My prior dry fire stuff would be 2 hours. This was 10 minutes, but getting good feedback. At the end of that trip, I came back home. The Alabama State match was at my home club that weekend. And back then, there wasn't practice score. It was mail-in registration. Yeah, well, the match was full. I showed up, the day of and go up to the match director. It was my home club. I shot there every weekend or one weekend a month. I'm like, hey, man, can I shoot?
Can you get me in?
Yeah. So he's like, yeah, sure. I was a B-class limited shooter. I won B-class limited, was 5th overall in limited at the state match.
Wow.
And back in the day, it was open and limited was where all the heat was. Some people production was starting to gain some traction, but so I was like, that was a big deal, and I went from a mid-pack shooter to for club matches, and it was either first or second.
So this is no live fire for 30 days. Only your 15 minutes a night in the hotel, or 15 minutes in the morning, 15 minutes a night. I forgot what you said there. In the hotel room, dry firing.
The right way. Not just doing draws and reloads. I'd done a lot of draws and reloads, but I was getting answers off the sites, and it was making that habit. Shooting's about habits. Now, everybody's probably heard that saying, hey, when it's time to perform, you're not going to rise to the occasion.
Right. Default to the lowest level training. Yeah.
Right. I look at it this way. It's what's going to happen when it's time to perform is your habits show up. And doing that was an easy thing. Humans are super adaptive, Doesn't take 10,000 times to learn how to do something new. It was matters how you go about putting in the effort, But just that little easy effort, produced some serious habits that translated, So that was huge. It's huge. And I can't emphasize that enough to people. If you want to be better at shooting, shooting's way more visual than it is physical, and in dry fire, especially when you know the game, you can develop almost every habit and skill set, develop it as a habit and even refine it to whatever level you want to in dry fire. There's only 2 things you got to do live to experience. The amount of recoil the gun transmits to you. What does that feel like?
Right.
So your body has to adapt to that to know how it's going to react to it. And then some of the time stuff. In the go fast stuff, the eyes are significantly faster than the gun can operate. So we'll frequently have those transition mics where hey, there's a target right there. There's the sights. Do this twice. I got to go, and you leave before the second lift. Well, you got to shoot live to kind of plug in hey, how long is it going to take the sights to come back on that target? Kind of build a little bit of that database. Hey, this is going to take this long. This is going to take that long, But other than that, all the base, what's it going to take to get alphas? What kind of trigger manipulation? What are transitions? Can they look like? Stabilizing the gun while you're moving, all your mechanics, draws, reloads, all that manipulate. All that can be done in dry fire. And the base, shooting, I've kind of boiled shooting down, like my fundamentals of fast stuff. I like simplified it way down. It's just like a short list of things we got to see and a short list of things we got to do. Even at any level you want to do it, like those things got to happen. How fast those things are happening or how well those things are happening, like it's still just those just few things, Dry fire is a great way to kind of plug those in.
So I'm listening to you talk. I mean, and what I hear you doing is you're simplifying the process, right? And you recognize like I could do less time, just be more intentional. Yeah. I'll pick more things up, and then that translates over to practical application when there is ammo in the gun, right? And we're actually doing the thing. At what stage? So you'd already been instructing people, right? On at the schoolhouse and whatever else. So you'd already had experience giving people instructions, seeing what they did with it, how they applied it, or how they might adjust to it. I'm wondering if during this time while you're going through this process, if you recognize like all the mistakes that you would have gone back and changed then, when you were in that schoolhouse, or actually you're still instructing. Did this impact how you were going forward instructing students there? Yeah, in the Army.
It was a lot of like the learning lessons were like a longer road for me. I talk about like adult learning. Like I've always had to learn things like by doing it and figuring it out. Like I've had really good people like explain things to me. Like it's like that's it. I just have to do it and mess it up a lot of times. So it's like, oh, that's what you're talking about. But I learned a lot about shooting after I was kind of at my peak as a shooter. Like say 2013ish, where like a lot of light bulb things started going off for me, and they were more like observation stuff, just like not from doing it, but just like seeing it. Like all of a sudden, you're like, wait a minute, what is that? Like that caught my eye. And like dig into that a little bit more, like watching either like videos or seeing other people do stuff.
Oh, so videos of yourself?
Yeah, or like the first thing, really, I don't know if it's the first thing, but first memory I remember of like kind of getting a little bit more analytical on that stuff. I saw a picture that I got that was a still taken out of a video. And it looked like I was doing something weird. It's like, do I do that?
Oh, right.
So now, next time I go shoot, I'm like thinking about that. Like this thing's engaged. Like, I'm not doing that. But that's what's going on, Right. And then I start just doing more of that, like watching other people and like in class stuff frequently, kind of, in some of the early install stuff, like I do a shooter and observer thing. Like, all right, as a shooter, here's what I was out there in front of you for you to see, and it's more, you see this stuff, get the interface kind of going more so than what's happening out there. And then as an observer, it's like, hey, why don't you look at these things? Like, how's the gun behaving? How's it recovering? Like, and it like can kind of help that, like when you have the gun in your hands, like now you got a little bit of that, like a little more like, hey, we're gonna be thinking about this thing. This is gonna be engaged while we're doing the shooting. That's, I don't know, for me, it's got to kind of starts coming together a little bit faster.
Yeah, there's stuff happening in the background that you don't have to think about, and it's kind of automatic. It's on autopilot. So that once it's on autopilot, it opens up more bandwidth for you to see and maybe pick up more things.
Yeah, and like let this thing kind of take over.
Your head,
a training school. Yeah, your brain. Yeah, man. Like there's like in shooting, there's a lot of different perspectives, but there's been a lot of like, hey, to shoot, you have to stand like this. You have to hold the gun like you have to do.
Yep.
And instead of like what you see
or what you're feeling.
Yeah. Or so throw it out there like, hey man, like here's some stuff we got to see. Like plug that stuff. Tell folks now, like I do more. My training stuff is like more like concept
I was just
heavy
say that.
than technique heavy.
About,
because people develop their own techniques. Especially if you understand the concept, technique follows. But if we try to do technique, we never understand like, hey, what is even the concept? What are we trying to accomplish? Like, well, you're doing this, but why? I've always been a kind of a why guy. Like as a mechanic, I was like, all right, this thing doesn't work. How's it supposed to work? Let me see the schematic.
There's a checklist, right, that you can go through.
Okay, this is not happening. All right, that's supposed to happen. That's supposed to happen. Like right there. That's not happening. Boom, now it works. So like, hey, only 100 miles an hour. Like, well, shit,
yeah, they want to get to the end.
Yeah,
right.
I want to shoot a whole press in like 2 seconds. Like, well, good luck with that. But, and then like as an Army guy, like I was like, SF was like, hey, you want me to put this backpack on and like walk that way? Somebody tell me what to do when I get over there. Like, okay, cool. All right, not that big. Or like, that was kind of like some of the selection process stuff.
But it was like, it's not a thinking man's game, right?
Yeah, it was like, hey, here's instead of like, once you get their selection, you get a mission. Like, hey, here's what we want you to accomplish. Not Here's how you're going to do it. Like, get this accomplished. All right, cool. Yeah, I'm good at that, But understand something like that, understand like kind of concepts, like how you go about doing it. And people are different. And, humans are different, like physiologically and like, how we learn and whatnot. But I think if we understand what the concept is, like people will arrive at their own technique a lot quicker.
Yeah, well, things can be cleaned up a little bit within there. So again, going back through the steps in the process, like they'll get things going on, and then it may just take a little tweak. Somebody can see them doing it and give it. Yeah, so going back to reading books, like you're reading all the details about all the things, but you maybe didn't fully understand the concept yet.
Yeah,
and yeah,
with the Enos stuff, like a lot of his like visual kind of stuff, and like the mental side, I was like,
that's very cerebral.
I didn't get it, right? Like. After some exposure, like, oh, I get what you're trying to say there now.
So when is the like professional instruction outside of the government? When does that start for you?
Probably like 2012ish. Around 2008, I was like, you know what? When I'm done with the Army stuff, like I think I want to do this. I want to have like a shooting school or.
Are people asking you for it? Like, or are you being reached out to?
I don't remember that so much. I don't remember. Somewhere around 2009, I was like, I think I want to do this, and I like. Interface with the guy that I shot with that like I maybe did some website stuff, and I knew ultimately like you needed a website for the stuff. So he's like, hey, I got this guy that works for me. Like he's interested in some training stuff. Like he wants to like trade out with you. So the guy wanted to build me a website and do some training for him. I was like, well, I'm not really ready to do it yet. But he's like, yeah, we'll build it and just be out there, So I actually like built the website, like, and I started throwing some stuff on YouTube around like 2009, 10 or something like that. I didn't even talk. I like put some videos up, and had a website sitting there, and some people got some interest and reached out, and if you remember Superset CA on YouTube, all right, so that guy, I think that guy put me on the map, definitely helped, right? So I'm kind of done with last deployment and kind of gearing in. I was doing like some contract stuff, working for a company that was kind of building a range and doing that stuff, and he reached out to me. He was like, hey, I saw your videos. I'm out on the East Coast every now and then. I'd like to bring a couple friends and do some training. I was like, sweet. I'm working with these guys, building some ranges and stuff. Like, let's do it down there. Mm-hmm. That time frame starts rolling around. That stuff didn't kind of come through together, and he's coming. And my dad had some land not too far from where I live, and I was like, hey, could I build a range down there? Could I build a berm and have a range? Like, yeah, sure. So I rented a bulldozer. Dude shows up, parks a big semi truck with a bulldozer at the end of the driveway. There,
you're familiar with, right? Yeah.
I know. I
thought you were talking. You were driving big, like bigger equipment.
Oh yeah, well, I drove a wrecker, but but the bulldozer thing, that was a different thing. The guy gets unloads it, is like, hey, this does this, that does that. See you in 2 days. Like, all right,
figure it out.
Wear the seatbelt. It's bulldozer advice. Wear the seatbelt. So I'm like pushed up a berm, and like the wear the seatbelt part. There was like a pine tree I'd pushed down, like, and I kind of like came into it with some speed, like the stump part, and almost went over the front of the bulldozer. Bulldozers they don't stop when you leave the seat. Like, oh heavens. But anyway, so he shows up and he starts unloading equipment. And we're talking cameras and stuff, right? Or he asked, he's like, hey, do you mind if I take some video? I was like, no, man, go ahead. And he starts taking some of his gear out. I was like, man, what do you do? He's like, this is my hobby. So if anybody's watched his stuff, he's like, and he's like progressed through the years too, but like he does like really good informative like videos on like training and but maybe some on the training, but like gear, like if you're wondering about something, he's like super perspective on it, but he brought a guy with him, and he made a little hype video kind of thing. I wish I still had it. Maybe he still got it. But it used to be like when you open my website, this video played. Oh, yeah. But it's dark, and like a dude doing a VTAC 1-5 at night on steel, so all the sparks are flying off. And it wasn't me. I don't have that kind of trigger speed. His buddy had insane trigger speed. So starts off with a VTAC 1-5, like sparking on steel. Like, and then there's that like little highlight stuff and everything.
Yeah, like class. A sizzle reel.
Yeah, so people see that, and then they start reaching out, and kind of snowballed from there.
Interesting.
I was involved with like a company like brokered some training for different guys for a while, and that kind of helped put it out there. But kind of word of mouth stuff, really, I owe that guy a lot. Sure.
It's interesting how that works. Like I have a connection to that in a way where there's a buddy of mine. I haven't actually seen him. Like he's been avoiding me. So Chris Curris has been avoiding me. I'm going to say it publicly, Chris. Good buddy of mine down in South Florida. He's out here at SHOT Show, whatever. But he invited me out to do a course with him and some guys that he was working with because he had seen what we were doing on the podcast with some fitness and firearms fighting stuff. He's like, hey, man, you ever want to train? Come on down. He goes, I'd love to host you. And so I went down there and did this thing and then connected me with a very, very special circle of people. I'll just say that they know who they are. And they were, because he did that, like it really connected me in a different way with people to where there was like almost like an automatic, if you get the tap or if you get the thumbs up, you're kind of trusted, and it kind of snowballed. Right. And I'm not sure that like the podcast and what we do and how we're doing it would be the same if he hadn't done that. Like, I don't know if we'd be here. So I feel you on that. Yeah. It's interesting how that works, man, like from a social media perspective, because in how people start reaching out and then, you know, how that snowball kind of thing happens. So that 100% happened to me kind of in this situation. So I get that. In terms of the instruction, I want to talk about like process and kind of where you've been and, you know, what you're doing now, how you're teaching people now versus maybe how you were teaching people, you know, I don't know, 5 years ago, and what's evolved for you and what you're seeing maybe happening in the industry at large, because you're still very active. You're out there, you're out and about all the time. What you're seeing, you know, again, at large with how people are coming into maybe the sport of competitive shooting, just coming in. Let's keep it kind of more narrow to that. Yeah. How they're coming into it and what things look like now versus what they look like before. I mean, is this thing moving faster than it ever has? Oh, yeah. Are we still just doing the same things and this rinse, you know, repeat, you know, wash, rinse, repeat kind of thing? What's going on out there? Man,
they're like USPSA, like competitive shooting period. There's a lot of growth in it, but USPSA is like something like I've got like a lot of experience with, you know, like the hands-on-ish kind of stuff. So like when I got into it, like, now I say back in the day, but like it's not, but it was been around way before that. But like 07, you know, like in 07, 09, I was like, you know, I was at a match every weekend somewhere, you know. You know, a big club match, you know, like 30 people, you know, that was a big match. You know, like now we're like 100, you know, and like, you know, with practice score, like, you know, like the matches are full, like well before like club matches, you know, like that used to be area matches and state matches weren't even like full, you know, but like there are a lot of people are getting into it. And then the level of shooters, man. Whoa.
I know. Like when you go back to like seeing people do stuff you didn't know could be done, like it's pretty regular. Like you can open up YouTube or you can open up whatever social media and look and just like, damn, man, who is this dude? Like, and what's he been doing? Living under a rock, you know, kind of thing. Like it's wild.
Like, I don't know what maybe a generation too, like just being like a little bit more digital and kind of wired into like the visual stuff and everything. But
that's a good point. I hadn't thought about that.
Crazy fast people out there now.
From the vision perspective, how people learn through watching. Right, things versus learn through reading and doing. Mm-hmm. I guess I hadn't given that any thought, but also obviously there's way more information available now. Yeah. You can get it in shorter sections. You can kind of choose how you how you want the information delivered to you. Yeah. Before it was just books. That's what we had, maybe a YouTube video or two, and now it's what do you want? Because somebody's delivering it to you. Podcast, there's Instagram, there's YouTube, there's courses, there's all competition you can go to, there's whatever. A lot of accessibility, I guess. Mm-hmm. Anyway, sorry, I feel like I cut you off.
I think it's great because like if somebody's interested in shooting, there's like so many outlets, you know, so many varieties of competitive shooting. Like if you really feel like you want to get good, if you just want to do it, there's a lot of opportunities to do it. If you want to get good at it, there's a lot of perspective. There are a lot of people who are good at it now. And a lot of them like putting out information and then good information and like different, you know, like nobody owns everything. Shooting's like gumbo. There's like a little bit, there's some similar things, but everybody's kind of got their own little things. There's like, you know, kind of worth going out there and exploring and seeing like, you know, which kind of take or piece or flavors kind of feel. There's a lot out there for folks. And I'm like blown away, like just like the level of shooters and the golly, like there's really athletic dudes that are out there doing it now. And just the Twitch stuff that some of these cats got, like, wow, dude.
I know, like it's hard to keep up with. And it's also, I think there's like an evolution happening right now where, yes, going back to like the athletes versus, you know, like the guys that beat you your first, you know, the fat civilian guy or whatever, you know, the first time, like those guys are still freaking competitive. Right. And so I think about that. And so you talk about the evolution, how good those shooters already are. And I'm going, man, if those guys could move just a little bit better, maybe if they're a little bit lighter on their feet, you know, and had some athleticism, a little bit more athleticism, dude, what's the limit on this? You know, what's the limit on this? And in that said, it's also being pushed, like, obviously as shooters get better, the expectation or the, you know, gets higher and higher.
What the bar is?
Yeah, what the bar is. Yeah. Gets higher and higher and higher. Where do you see this thing going? Like, does it get to a point where it's so impacted that the hobbyist kind of is going to get lost and not really be able to kind of get into this because it's going to turn into, it's going to be so competitive, those people won't be able to compete or
I don't know. There's a lot of room, and a lot of those people are just like growing with it too. You know, a lot of people that are like you know, at the top of the game that are really new to it. It's just something that, like, this is their niche, they like it, and they have the competitive edge too, and like work towards it. You know, the current world champion in open, like, hadn't been shooting a long time. Christian Seiler, I don't know how long he's been shooting. I know I became aware of him like around 2017-ish or so, and he was just like dominating stuff and like winning nationals and world championship stuff, and like he hadn't been doing it his whole life. And actually, he doesn't even do it professionally. Like, it's something he likes to do. Like, he doesn't shoot every day for a living. You know?
That is another thing. You know, just that there are so many, and there are people that can show up and do this in seemingly short period of time. I mean, I've seen, I think,
you see in athletics, I mean, humans are amazing what they can do, right?
That's what I'm
it's just
getting
like
at.
what they want to do. But yeah, but for the people who just want to shoot the sport, there's still plenty of folks like, hey, just like shooting. I might end up having to just be that guy. I was like, hey, I'm not going to win anything. I'm just going to show up and enjoy shooting and shoot my game. But there's plenty of folks that just like, hey, I'm having fun. You know, like, that's the thing about USPSA too. Like, you're not, you know, if you show up to a match and like that dude's there, Max Leograndis or somebody's there, like, you're not competing against them. You know, like, if you want to be competitive, you're competing in the division you're shooting in the classification you're at right now. And if you want to grow, that's always out there. You just have to have a good time working against yourself on this event right here, you know? So that's there. Yeah, I don't think that's going away, which is cool too, you know? But the upper mobility in the sport, man, I don't know what the ceiling is for some of these guys, man. And the people coming on after them, like,
and it's wild. Yeah. I saw maybe
and girls,
it for sure.
Yeah,
I mean, they're for sure. They're beating the pants off people out there. Like, I see stuff like people send me stuff. I'm like, did you see this? I'm like, I did not see that. Like, again, I'm blown away by the level of skill, talent, and obviously, you know, anytime I sit down, I talk to guys like you, and just the process that they went through to get where they're at. It seems like it's getting a little bit more refined for people now too. Like, you talked about the 2,000 rounds in an afternoon, you know, and the harder lesson, like in learning it over a longer period of time, seems like the start to where they you know, to advancement it's a much shorter timeline now, which is a little bit, it's very scary to think about. Like, where could this 15-year-old that's just wiping the slate clean, you know, every weekend is going to be, or, you know, every week is going to be in 5 years. Yeah. You know, it trips me out. What about like, technology and kind of what you're seeing? I mean, you're at SHOT Show, right? We're here. Like, there's a lot of stuff going on out there. I think you said you hadn't been here in several years.
Probably 15 or something like that.
Yeah, 15. Yeah. Did you get a chance to walk the floor today?
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah. There's all kind of stuff out there.
Yeah, I mean, has it changed much?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, what did you see that caught your eye down there?
There's like everything. There's like, I haven't really like dug in, like walking around, you know, like, I mean, like all kinds of weird stuff. I was like walking around by Smith & Wesson. It was like, Smith & Wesson has a lever action. And it's like set up like kind of cool where everybody wants to be now with the lever action. You put a suppressor on it, you know, like, what?
Yeah.
Well, this has got Smith & Wesson lever action. But yeah, there's like all the, I think it's kind of a good era for shooting too. I think things are kind of like really starting to come back together. You know, a lot of people are interested in shooting. It's available. The economy's kind of coming back maybe too. So it's like kind of a cool era. Yeah. Yeah,
I think like I have had a couple conversations this week with guys that manufacture guns and are part of the intimately involved in the design and the manufacturing, and then you know, direct to consumer type of process. And the thing that I hear that seems to be the theme, and you know, I guess I'm sort of new to this. Well, no, that's not sort of. I'm very new to kind of the advancements that have been made. But they're talking about look, there's not a lot of innovation that's going on down there. We're seeing the same things. Like the guns are still the guns. They do the same stuff. But I have to say, like, when you get into the competition world, it seems to me there are things that can enhance the skills that you have or whatever. I wonder what your experience was like that as you were kind of coming up and what you were discovering, just in your equipment and how you made adjustments or whatnot along the way and how you figured those things out.
I do. So like mechanical kind of background, so
that's what I mean.
Guns became my tools and like, all right, that's the job I need to do. This could do it. This could make it easier. This could work better. I mean, I remember like, this was my own upper, but like being on the range, one day and like, all right, so I've got an EOTech on this rifle because it like lets me see stuff faster. Mm-hmm. But there's a big piece of steel out there in front of the EOTech, like that front sight block, like, I'm going to cut that off.
Do I need that?
Yeah. I went over to my truck on a brake and on the tailgate with a hacksaw, cut the front sight post off. Like, oh yeah, this is the way right here. So like all that stuff. So like, and as I started competing, like I looked at it this way, like, all right, look, that's what I got to do. If it can work, if it got to work. A lot of people didn't do that earlier. Maybe still don't do that, but like if it can make my life easier, if it can enhance performance, but it's always reliable, I'm going to do that, Even in that translator, like last deployment, like the way I set my guns up, like I would go shoot, a carbine match with what I took to war. I would shoot a pistol match with the way I had the pistol set up, like, and why wouldn't, fighting or combat is competition. Somebody's got to win, So like, why wouldn't I use stuff that would make my life easier if it worked? If I were going to shoot a match, why wouldn't I make my life easier? But why would I do it to a degree like it might not work? So performance and reliability, I definitely dig that blend. I think there's like, I don't know, like, hey, are guns still the guns? But there's a lot more people putting out guns now that are like, they're right. It's not like you're buying a skeleton and then like having to turn it into what you want it to do for performance and reliability. There's more guns out there now that are like really kind of set up out of the box to offer a shooter like that, performance and reliability stuff.
Give me an example of one that you really like.
Yeah, I like a little bit personal stuff, but I've been working with Kimber since like early February. They reached out to me like, hey, we got a new product coming. We'd like you to do some training at an event for it, like. And I thought it was going to be like a polymer gun. I was like, yeah, okay. And then as I got in, like, hey, the product's going to be, the 2K11 that's out now. Like, oh, really? That's absolutely my lane, right? Because, shot a little bit of everything, actually almost everything platform-wise, like searching for like perfect. Like, I do dig like 1911 concept, easy platform to shoot, but, 2011 stuff, like, more ammo.
Right.
So their gun is out now. The 2K11 is out now. It was a cool thing as a company too. Like, they wanted my input as a shooter. Like, hey, you shoot guns. Like,
so you're part of the process.
What do you think about this? I went down there and I didn't design the gun by no means, but like, like here's our engineering drawings. This is what the gun looks like. Like, oh, that's cool. Like that. Like that might be a little bit cooler if it was like that. They implement few changes here and there too, and like so that was cool.
That's very cool.
So that gun is like out of the box, like super shootable. It's got some aesthetic stuff that appeals to people too, but like they put the stuff in there, like that gun shoots. That it runs, it's slick, it's accurate, it's got a good trigger, got an aluminum grip module on it out of the box. And then we're gonna do like an FP version, like down the road pretty soon.
Oh, that's cool.
So, yeah, so
nice.
That's kind of neat. But there's other stuff out there like that too coming out. But that gun's really slick. But,
yeah, I'm always curious to see the new products that are out there and things people are doing in that regard. And obviously there's a market for it, particularly on the competition shooting side, from a performance level. Yeah. But people just like to have new stuff. Like
right.
They like to have the new thing. I think it's cool that they're bringing in guys like you to do that. I've actually heard that a couple of times, just in terms of how companies, just this weekend and some specific things, and I won't get into all that. But the how they're bringing in shooters and that basically end users, right, and getting their feedback and the ways that they're doing it. And one of those is obviously to go out and talk to the guys that do the thing and have done the thing for a long time and proven that they do it at a high level and get their feedback rather than trying to put something in front of somebody that they think is good, right? Going out and get that. And to me, like when I came in, that would make sense, right? But what I've learned is it's more like the car business. Like some engineers in the back room decided, well, we're going to make some changes to this because we need to make it look a little different. We also need to save a little money. Oh, by the way, we learned some things about aerodynamics a little bit and efficiency and things like that. And we're going to put this out to market and people are going to buy it, right? And they do, right? But they put it out there and then, Motor Trend comes out and says, this thing sucks and here's all the reasons why. Yeah. Or now they don't do that anymore because the car companies pay them to write the articles. But the point of this is like the end user is going, man, I wouldn't have done it that way. I'll give you a perfect example. This will probably offend somebody. Like, I really wanted to like the new Ford Bronco. I had one, right? Okay. I had one back in the 90s. I had one back in the 90s. I really wanted to. That thing is the biggest disappointment, right? Like, I was like, guys, you guys had all the opportunity in the world. Like, who did you talk to, right, to come out like that? Again, for you Ford Bronco owners, like, sorry if I offend you, sorry, not sorry. But my point of that is the process to get to the end product or it actually gets delivered. I was talking to some guys yesterday who, do not pay attention to the comments, like, in places like YouTube or Facebook or, whatever. And I talked to another company that's like, no, we take that very seriously. We actually go digging for it. We want to see it all. We want to hear it all. Some of it, is not too good, but they have kind of narrowed down and they've used, some AI and, and some humans at the same time to kind of figure out like, these are things that are coming back that we should learn about and we can actually put it out there and ask the questions and we will get actually very good feedback, technical feedback on stuff. So I think that's interesting. I think that's different. Like they're using the power of social media to get feedback on their stuff before they're designing anything and putting it out there. So I think, going back to like what you're saying, I think the refinement of how things are going as these new, more shootable, out of the box guns come, it's going to give some of those other places or other companies that people would buy and then have to try to build it into something that works for them. I think they should be paying attention, right? Yeah. Because while they might have their large contracts, whether that's law enforcement, military, government, whatever else, like there's a large market of people that are looking for performance and they will spend the money. And if it costs them $600 for a whatever, right, brand X, but then they have to put another $1,500 into it. Why not spend another maybe $300-$400 more than that to get the thing ready to go out of the box? Yeah,
they can just enjoy it.
And then take it out on the range and enjoy it. And you not have I hesitate to say this. You don't have a Frankenstein. You have a thing that's maybe coming with a warranty and coming with some type of a plan, behind it. Like if something's wrong with it. This Frankenstein, I just got a bunch of parts, right, that I put together. Not to bag on parts companies, right? But in this thing now, I have something that's this fully unit. I think it presents maybe some issues too for them. I'm looking at it like, don't touch it. Send it to me versus maybe a tinkerer like you or a mechanic like you who will want to pull it apart. Don't fuck it up. Well, send it to us. We'll figure it out. So that's interesting to me too. Yeah. But okay, so Kimber, like this is a new thing for you.
Yeah. I kind of started in February, and it's been really cool.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
I mean, what does that mean going through the rest of the year? I mean, you mentioned like there may be a FP version of this coming out or whatever.
Yeah, hopefully what's going down. Actually, I sat down before Christmas, went down to the factory there, and sat down with one of the engineers and kind of like laid out the model or the roadmap for my gun. Yeah. And a few different variations that I'm kind of see through there too, but like springish, probably be some prototype stuff I'll be playing with. But yeah, and then like production type stuff that kind of takes a little bit of time, but yeah, like we'll start putting hands on, like having some prototypes probably this spring sometime.
What about the business end, just in terms of like teaching courses and things like that? What's the year look like for you? I mean, we're early January, so
pretty solid. Still some room here and there, but I kind of got it going now where I travel, like once, twice a month, and like I'll do some private stuff. I've got a little Range Rover by my house there, but yeah, try to keep it like where it's fun. It's always been fun, There was a phase where I remember maybe like June of 2014, I was like planning all my logistics for like hotels, cars, and all that stuff. Like I'm not going to be able to come home in June. Because like I would have had like a day and a half at home in between stuff. I ended up flying my family out to San Francisco.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah. So they came out there and we spent I'd been in December, the December before that with my wife, and like kind of had an idea of the weather, and this was June, and like it was cold in June. I think it was colder in June than it was. So they showed up for like summer.
You got
it
the
was
June
not
bloom.
super.
The best time to be there is actually like September through the beginning of December. It's gorgeous out there.
Yeah.
You get the June gloom, you get the fog, right? And then the cold weather that comes in from the north and off the ocean. Well, I know one of the things you're also doing that I'm super excited about, which has kind of put us together, is West Coast Range Weekend that happens it'll happen here in outside of Vegas at Staccato, Las Vegas, which is the old, it just happened yesterday, old Prairie Fire.
Oh, okay.
Whatever. We were both out there, and you're coming out to do that in October, which I'm super excited about. It gives me an opportunity to potentially train a little bit bigger part of that thing. I don't know how much training I'll be doing while I'm there, but you'll be out here on the West Coast for that, and that's kind of what put us together. I'm super stoked about that.
Thank you, man.
So thanks for being part of that.
Yeah,
that'll be cool. All right, any other exciting things happening for Frank Proctor in 2025?
Who knows, man? Been enjoying shooting a lot. I've been. I took a little as I was kind of starting my business up. I didn't compete quite as much, and I kind of started getting back in some 2017, 18ish, whatever. Got on the PCC kick a lot, and 19ish a while, then a little dwell, but I'm shooting a lot this past year or so.
Yeah, the PCC thing is interesting to me. It looks like it's on the upswing right now.
That's super cool.
Yeah, so going back to new shooters coming in, the variety of things that exist out there, a good friend of mine is starting to jump into the PCC side of things, and I think there's a lot of opportunity there. And by the way, those are cool guns to shoot, right? And I like to see more of that. I think that's something I could be entertained into potential or convinced to maybe go try out. So that's more competition this year.
Oh yeah. Still gonna do that. I'm probably just some PCC more. I may dabble in open a little bit.
Yeah,
I'm getting a couple of 2K11s in. I'm gonna build an open gun on one of them. So open's kind of cool, visually, a little bit less movement and dots and stuff. But more PCC. Might shoot the PCC Nationals again. I don't know. We'll see.
We don't know. We'll see. The man of mystery. I love it. But we'll see. Look, man, I can't thank you enough for taking time out. I mean, it's early in the week. I'm glad I got you here before they wear you out downstairs and with all the things that happen here. Taking time out to come up, sit down, just chat with me. It's been a treat for me, man.
It's been fun. I keep doing this for 2 hours, but I know we gotta go.
I feel the same. I feel the same. But I should get you back to your friends and the things you gotta do here. I should probably do the same. But look, man, if there's anything, I mean, obviously I'm looking forward to seeing you in later in the year. But if there's anything I can do to help you, or I don't know what that would be. I have no friggin' idea. But if there's anything I can do to help or support you in whatever way, man, just freaking let me know.
All right, same here, man. Appreciate it. Yeah, I'll be at a class sometime. I'll be up in Richmond some this year.
You're coming back to Richmond?
Yep.
All right. Well, that's close. That's real close. So
you're in town, come out.
All right, man. I appreciate the invite. Thanks again.
Yeah, thank you, brother. All right.